Hello, friends. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show brought to you by the Institute of Clinical Excellence. Today is Wednesday. That means it's Jerry on Ice, where we talk about all things older adults. My name is Dustin Jones. I teach modern management of the older adult with Christina Previtt. Modern Management of the Older Adult is a 2-day live course as well as an 8-week online cohort. Our next online cohort starts June 9th. And Christina and I are both working diligently right now to just include or update any information that we can whenever we come across a new article or we learn something new in our own clinical practice or from other clinicians. We keep that course as fresh as possible. So we're taking this time now to really think about things and have a critical eye, and also use the feedback that we're getting from our students, which has been awesome. So 2 weeks ago, I talked about our gait assessments may not be matching reality, and I kind of left a little teaser. I wanted to talk more about the interventions in this episode, and we're going to do that. So for those that didn't see 2 weeks ago, I would encourage you to do so. 2 weeks back, where we looked at a study that was really interesting, where they took an accelerometer or a gyroscope. They use the term gyroscope, but I kind of view it as like an accelerometer that you'd have in your phone. But they attached that to people, and they measured some variables of their gait pattern in a very clean lab environment where they watched people ambulate. But then they were also able to track that data when people went into their home. So not in a controlled environment, and they were seeing how did their performance in the lab compare to their performance in the real world. And what they found was that it was their ambulation performance over 50% of the time was worse in the real world as compared to what they saw in the lab. And so what that demonstrated was, that in-lab gait assessment wasn't necessarily reflecting what was happening on the day-to-day level for that patient, but also just how, complex environments, dual tasking, how that impacts performance. And so we need to think about that with our assessments, and that's what we talked about in the last episode. We're going to talk about interventions today. So the study that I want to bring up today that I found very interesting, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up now. So in 2018, the Archives of Gerontology and Geriatrics, this study is titled Dual Task Training in Older Adults, the Effect of Additional Motor Tasks on Mobility Performance. So dual task training in older adults, how does that impact mobility performance when they're when patients or people are performing additional motor tasks? So what they did, this is a pretty interesting study in how they broke this down. So they took very healthy individuals. I mean, that's kind of an issue with the study because it's not who I treat. Most of my patients would be excluded from this study for sure. But they took people and split them up into a single task training group, a dual task training group, and a control group. Okay, so the control group continued on with life as usual. So that's what they were doing in the control group. The single task training group, they performed a combination of static and dynamic balance activities, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And they progressed via, taking away vision, closing eyes, adjusting their stance, and they also performed some different gait scenarios. Now, the dual task training group performed the same regimen that the single task training group performed, but they had an added complexity of performing motor tasks. And these are common object manipulation tasks that we do on a day-to-day basis. They layered that on top of the single task training. So I'm just going to read some of these so you get a good idea. So the balance exercise, they did static, semi-tandem stance, tandem stance. They did a one-leg stance, and all those were with or without eyes open. They did the gait exercise where people just walked in a circle, where they walked forward, backward, side to side, where they turned, walking along a straight line, then walking along a straight line on their toes, and then with their eyes open and eyes closed, and then also an obstacle course. So that was the single task training. Now, the dual task training did all of that, and then they added on. I'm gonna read some of these because they're pretty wild. Taking on or putting on and taking off a sweater, putting on and taking off a shirt, putting on and taking off a sweatshirt with a zipper, folding a scarf, tying twine, unscrewing a nut and bolt, unscrewing the top from a bottle of water in front of them and then behind them as well as they're performing these different activities. And so that was the intervention, and what they were measuring was how that impacted mobility. So what they did was a 6-minute walk test. the 4-square step test, and then the timed up and go. Hopefully those are things that you're familiar with. If not, look them up. I'll put a link in the comments below. But they performed those tests. They got baseline measurements and then measured after the interventions at 16 weeks. But they also added complexity to those functional measures. So the 6-minute walk test, they also did that while holding a cup of water and while holding a tray with a small ball on top of that tray. They did the same for the tug, and they did the same for the 4-square step test. So hopefully you can portray, I know, listening to this on the podcast, it may be tough to track, but that's what they did. 16 weeks of those interventions. They had those objective measures at the beginning and at the end, and they wanted to see the difference. So both training groups improved across the board on those functional measures. However, the dual task training group performed significantly better compared to the single task training group on all of the functional measures. And what I really want to point out is the dual task training group, they improved even on the single task functional measures like the 6-minute walk test, the tug, and the 4-square step test. Without holding the water, without the balancing the ball in the tray, the dual task training group performed much better on those single task functional measures as compared to the single task training group. I hope that made sense. The dual task training allowed them to perform single tasks better as well as the dual task functional measures. There was improvement across the board. And so what this study, which it was a relatively small study, but what it showed is that dual task training, and this was motor dual task training, helped people across the board and allowed them to be, better able to handle kind of what is thrown at them in their day-to-day life, performing their ADLs, their IADLs, and interacting in their community. So what do we do with that? So I think the big thing that I think a lot about is, going back to the assessment, back to, 2 weeks ago. Are our assessments really getting a clear idea of how people are performing in a real world environment, in these complex environments where they're having to do different things, whether it's a dual motor task or another cognitive task as they're walking or, doing whatever it is that they're doing in their life? And we can assess that. I loved how they did the 6-minute walk test and 6-minute walk test with holding a cup of water, 6-minute walk test, holding a tray. We do this in our live course, the MMOA live course. We'll have people do a timed up and go, and then we'll do a timed up and go while they're holding on a cup of water, and then timed up and go as they're counting down from 100 by 7. And we'll look at the differences in the performance. And it is absolutely fascinating to see. And we can do the same with our patients. And I would encourage, especially the folks in the outpatient orthopedic setting, to be doing this already. It will give you a more accurate picture of how someone is performing once they leave your clinic. So assessing how does the impact of a dual cognitive task and also a dual motor task impact performance. You can assess this with these functional measures. You can add that layer, whether it's a cognitive or another motor task, and kind of see the difference there. But then also influencing our intervention. So how do they perform on those assessments? And that can really influence what we may do. So we may really want to ramp things up cognitively. And a great way to do that, which you've heard us say this several times, is the Clock Yourself app. So Meg Lowry, down in Australia, one of our good friends here at ICE and with Jaros Health as well, developed this app. And if y'all have not bought this yet, do it. It is absolutely amazing and simple and scalable. I can use this with my 90-year-old homebound older adult that I'm going to see today, and then I can use it for my own training right after that. And it's going to be challenging for both of us. Very scalable. That's a very easy way to increase that cognitive complexity of an activity, and it's fun and just a great way to do that in a standing manner. There's all kinds of different ways that we can do this to layer on that cognitive complexity, but we can also layer on the motor dual tasking on top of our current interventions, that object manipulation, whether it's, putting the shirt on, taking the shirt off. That may be a little awkward in some settings, but, opening up the bottle of water, holding the cup of water. I mean, there's so many things that we can do. And I think we can really look to some of our colleagues in the occupational therapy world to where we can layer on some of the interventions that they're commonly doing on top of some of the activities that we are trying to do already, whether we're trying to improve their balance, improve their strength, and improve their performance. Now, I'm not saying we need to be layering on complexity with every single person. A lot of people, it may not be an issue for them, so we don't need to do that. But for many older adults, when we increase the complexity of an activity cognitively or add another motor task, the wheels start to fall off pretty quickly. And you'll see this, if you try this on a lot of your patients. So I think that's what I walk away with from this study. I mean, it's not an authoritative study, but it gives you a lot of really good ideas. I'll put a link in the comments on the Facebook video for this. So I encourage you to check that out. Let me know how it goes, using some of these different dual tasks with your interventions and your assessments. I'd love to hear how it's working for you. I know for me, I've been really enjoying adding this layer to my assessments and my interventions. And I think I should take the chance to potentially apologize for, I think it's easy for me. I've been saying so much about we need to get older adults stronger. We need to improve their strength, their power, improve their confidence, build more robust and resilient human beings. And I've advocated heavily for higher intensity strength training. And I will be riding that horse till the day I die, because it is still a big issue in our profession to where we are consistently underdosing older adults and not serving them to the best of our abilities. But as most older adults need to get stronger, a lot of older adults also need, to be challenged cognitively, to where we need to be doing some of these dual task activities to really make a tangible impact in their real world performance, because in reality, their life is a little more complex than holding a heavy weight and standing up and sitting down, or holding a heavy weight and putting it on the ground and picking it up like a deadlift, for example. We have to layer on the complexity. And, big shout out to Meg Lowry for someone that's been advocating for this for a while. And the research is really supporting this. But I'm not going to say it for everybody, but we need to let our assessments inform our interventions and not our assumptions. But for a lot of people, this dual task, whether it's cognitive or motor, is going to be good for them, and we should try and implement that. So leave a comment. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are. Have you used this in assessments? Have you used this in interventions? How are you layering on complexity on top of your interventions? I'd love to hear your experience. Another reminder, June 9th is when the online cohort of Modern Management of the Older Adults starts. And I would also encourage you to check out Hump Day Hustling as well. This is the weekly email every Wednesday. Jeff puts a message in our group that says, hey, Hump Day Hustling, what you got? What's your favorite read this week, favorite podcast, favorite thing that you learned that helped you in your work? And we throw in our favorite articles or links, and then he puts it together, super simple email, and then shoots it out every Wednesday morning. Super helpful. You also get to know what courses are coming up at the very end. He just delivers the goods. It's not spammy whatsoever, but I would highly encourage you to check that out, because I know I've benefited a ton from getting those links and having some things to read and just to keep me up on things and keep me nice and fresh. So Hump Day Hustling, that's at ptonice.com. Go to the bottom, just put your name and your email, and you'll be good to go. So hope this was helpful. I'll talk with y'all in a couple weeks.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.